What's the dumbest rule at your school? My friend started choking right outside school, but because of stupid rules, the teachers let him die. A few months back, there was this huge scandal in my state. A teacher had crossed every possible line with one of his students outside of school. And when the story broke, the whole community lost its mind. News stations ran it non-stop. Facebook was flooded with angry parents, and politicians started scrambling to look tough. The solution they came up with? A brand new law that made it completely illegal for teachers to have any kind of contact with students outside of school property. No Facebook groups, no texting, no chatting in the grocery store, nothing. If you got caught, you could lose your job, your license, maybe even face charges. It sounded strict on paper, but in reality, it was terrifying. Teachers became paranoid. They wouldn't even look at us outside the building. Once I ran into my homeroom teacher at the local supermarket. I said hi and tried to strike up small talk, and she looked at me like I had just pulled a gun. She muttered something about being in a rush, grabbed her cart, and practically ran away. That's how bad the fear was. Now, my best friend Jack had a serious peanut allergy, like death serious. Even the smell could trigger a reaction. He carried meds with him everywhere, but our homeroom teacher also kept a spare set at school, just in case. We all knew about it because once in middle school, he had a reaction so bad we thought we were going to lose him. Since then, everyone was on alert. Jack was also head over heels for this girl in our grade, Lizzie. They'd been talking, hanging out, but nothing official yet. You know how high school crushes go. Everything feels like life or death, even before life and death actually get involved. On this particular day, we had homeroom last period. Nothing special happened in class, but when the final bell rang and we walked outside, Lizzie came up to Jack. They chatted for a bit, then she leaned in and kissed him goodbye. Just a quick kiss, nothing crazy, but Jack's face lit up like he'd won the lottery. His cheeks were bright red, and he kept grinning like an idiot. At first, I thought that was all it was, just a love-struck guy blushing hard. But then I noticed he was making this weird rasping noise. His grin faded. His face was still red, but not the happy kind. He stumbled, clutching his throat, and within seconds, he was on the ground, sweating and gasping. Lizzie saw him collapse from the bus stop and sprinted back over, panicked. She asked what was happening. I told her it looked like an allergic reaction, the same kind he'd had years ago. But how? He hadn't eaten anything. That's when I noticed her pocket. A wrapper was sticking out, a protein bar wrapper, peanut flavor. My stomach dropped. It hit me all at once. She'd eaten the bar before kissing him. That tiny trace was enough. I yelled at Lizzie to stay with him while I sprinted toward the parking lot. Our homeroom teacher was just getting into her car, and I knew she had the emergency meds. I waved my arms like a lunatic, screaming, "Please! Jack's having a reaction! I need his allergy meds right now!" She froze, her hand on the car door. For a second, I thought she was going to help, but then she shook her head, almost whispering, "I can't! He's off school grounds! He's under his mother's care now. If I give him anything, I'll lose my job." I couldn't believe it. Jack was literally fighting for his life, and she was quoting some stupid law. I begged her. I shouted. I told her he was going to die. She just repeated the same line like a robot. "I'm sorry. I can't." My phone buzzed. Lizzie was calling. I picked up, breathless. Her voice was trembling, broken. "Bill, he's not breathing." I stood there in shock, useless, while my best friend lay on the ground, suffocating 20 yards away. The teachers were too scared to help. The rules were more important than his life, and that moment I exactly knew what I have to do. I froze for a second after Lizzie's call. "He's not breathing." The words echoed in my head like an alarm. My best friend was dying 20 steps away, and the one adult who could help had just locked herself inside her car. I don't even remember making the decision. My body just moved. As my teacher started backing her car out, I noticed the lanyard with her classroom keys dangling from her rearview mirror. It was like some cruel cosmic joke. The meds Jack needed were behind a locked door, and the keys were literally swinging in front of my eyes. I ran up, pounded on her window. She cracked it just enough to hiss, "Go home, Bill. Call his parents." Instead, I yanked the door open. She gasped and tried to push me away, but panic made me stronger than I thought I could ever be. I grabbed the keys, bolted, and heard her shouting behind me. Threats about expulsion, the police, lawsuits, none of it mattered. I sprinted back toward the school building. The hallways were already emptying out. Everyone was either on the buses or gone. My heart was slamming so hard I thought I'd pass out before even getting inside. The keys jingled in my hand, slick with sweat. I knew exactly where to go. Room 214, our homeroom. That's where she kept the backup EpiPens in a locked cabinet. The door resisted for a second before the right key slid in. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the whole ring. The classroom was eerie with. The lights off, desks lined up like silent witnesses. I dashed to the back cabinet, fumbling with another key, whispering, "Come on, come on!" The lock clicked open. Inside, on the top shelf, was the bright orange case. I nearly cried when I saw it. 2 EpiPens, sealed and ready. I snatched them and pulled out my phone with my other hand. Dialed 911, breath ragged. "My friend, he's allergic to peanuts. He's not breathing. We need an ambulance at Jefferson High, front entrance." The dispatcher's voice was calm, almost unreal compared to the chaos in my chest. "Stay on the line. Do you have epinephrine?" "Yes, I'm going to him now." I tore back down the hall, past the trophy case and faded posters. My legs felt like rubber, lungs burning. Every second was a countdown to whether Jack would live or die. As I burst out the front doors, I saw Lizzie kneeling on the pavement. Jack was sprawled next to her, face swollen, lips blue. She was sobbing, shaking his shoulders. "Bill, hurry!" I slid next to him, hands trembling so badly I almost couldn't pop the safety cap. But muscle memory kicked in. Blue to the sky, orange to the thigh. I jammed the EpiPen into his leg and pressed. His body jerked, and I whispered, "Please, please work!" Lizzie was crying, asking if he'd be okay, but I didn't answer. I grabbed the second pen, ready if nothing changed. For a long moment, nothing did. He just lay there, skin clammy, chest barely moving. Then, slowly, there was a shallow gasp. Another. His throat rattled, but air was finally moving again. "Jack, stay with me!" I shouted. "You're okay, man! You're okay!" I kept talking, partly to him, partly to myself. I pressed my hands against his chest when his breathing faltered, trying CPR the way I'd seen in health class videos. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't clean, but it was something far off. I heard sirens. The sweetest sound I've ever heard in my life. Lizzie squeezed Jack's hand, whispering through tears, "Don't you dare leave me now. Don't you dare." I don't know how long it took. Maybe minutes, maybe an eternity. But the ambulance finally skidded to a stop at the curb. Paramedics rushed out with gear, pushing me gently aside. One of them looked at me, saw the empty EpiPen, and gave me a quick nod like, "Good job, kid." I staggered back, adrenaline crashing. My whole body was trembling, my shirt damp with sweat. Lizzie clung to me, both of us watching as they lifted Jack onto a stretcher, attaching masks and monitors, shouting codes we didn't understand. They loaded him into the ambulance. Doors slamming shut. And then he was gone. I stood there, staring at the empty spot on the pavement where he'd been. My hands were still shaking, orange cap from the EpiPen pressed into my palm so hard it left a mark. The teacher's voice echoed in my head. "I can't. He's off school grounds." Jack was alive, barely, because I broke the law, because I stole, because I refused to listen to the rules. And I knew, deep down, the fight was just beginning. The EpiPen had bought us seconds, maybe minutes, but it wasn't a miracle cure. Jack's chest kept stuttering, like a broken engine. Sometimes he'd gasp, then nothing. Lizzie was crying so hard I thought she'd pass out. "Keep talking to him," I told her, even though my own voice was shaking. "He needs to hear you." She nodded, stroking his hair, whispering, "Jack, it's okay. Please breathe. Please stay with me." I knelt over him, pressing my hands against his sternum the way we'd been taught in health class. Compress, release, compress, release. I counted under my breath, the way the video had shown. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. His ribs shifted under my palms, and for a horrible second I thought I was breaking him. But the alternative was worse. The dispatcher was still on my phone speaker, her calm voice cutting through the chaos. "Keep going. Help is on the way. You're doing great. Stay with him." I wanted to scream at her that I wasn't doing great, that my best friend was slipping away right under my hands. But I just kept pressing. Finally, red and blue lights washed over the school entrance. The ambulance skidded to a stop, sirens still blaring. Paramedics stormed out with bags and equipment. "Move aside, kid," one of them said firmly, but not unkindly. I staggered back, sweat dripping down my forehead, hands numb. Lizzie refused to let go of Jack's hand until one of the EMTs gently pulled her away. They moved fast. Oxygen mask, another shot of EPI, an IV line, a monitor flashing, jagged lines. Their voices overlapped. BP's dropping, airways swelling, prep intubation. I didn't understand half of it, but the tone said everything. This was still life or death. They loaded Jack onto a stretcher. His face was pale now, swelling still visible, lips dark. He looked like a stranger, not the goofy kid I'd just been joking with an hour ago. Lizzie broke down completely, sobbing into my shoulder as the paramedics wheeled him into the ambulance. "Can we ride with him?" I asked desperately. "Family only," one EMT said. Then, after a pause, he added quietly, "You did good, though. You gave him a chance." And just like that, the doors slammed, and Jack was gone again, swallowed by flashing lights and steel. Lizzie. And I stood on the curb, dazed, watching the ambulance disappear down the road. My phone buzzed. Jack's mom. I couldn't bring myself to answer. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, your son kissed a girl, went into anaphylaxis, and might not. Make it because of some law that banned teachers from helping him?" I shoved the phone back in my pocket. My whole body was trembling, heart still hammering in my chest. The police showed up next, probably because my teacher had called them about me stealing her keys. 2 officers asked questions. Who was hurt? Where was he taken? Did we have permission to use the meds? I barely registered their words. Lizzie did most of the talking between sobs. Eventually, one officer said, "Go to County General. That's where they'll take him." So we ran. Not literally ran. Lizzie's bus had already left, mine too, and I didn't even have my bike. But we cut through side streets until we found a ride. A neighbor who knew Jack's mom, who'd already heard something was wrong. He drove us in silence. Tension thick in the car. Lizzie kept twisting the empty protein bar wrapper in her hands like it was burning her fingers. "This is my fault," she whispered over and over. "I killed him. I didn't even think." "It's not your fault," I said automatically, though a part of me wanted to scream, "Why the hell didn't you tell him you'd eaten peanuts?" But I bit my tongue. She already looked like she was drowning in guilt. County General was a blur of white walls and fluorescent lights. The ER smelled like antiseptic and panic. Jack's mom was already there, pacing, eyes wild. When she saw me and Lizzie, she rushed over. "What happened?" she demanded. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Lizzie broke instead, sobbing, He kissed me. I ate peanuts." I didn't mean. Jack's mom went pale, but she didn't yell. She just sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. The next hours were hell. Nurses rushed in and out of the trauma bay where Jack was. We weren't allowed inside. Every time the doors swung open, I caught glimpses of machines, tubes, doctors shouting orders. Time crawl. Lizzie's tears dried into shaky silence. I just sat there, staring at my hands, a faint imprint from the EpiPen cap still in my palm. Finally, a doctor came out. His expression wasn't the relief we wanted. "He's alive," he said carefully. We stabilized his breathing. The epinephrine helped, but he hesitated, glancing at Jack's mom. "There was a period of oxygen deprivation. We won't know the full extent until he wakes up." Jack's mom whispered, "Brain damage?" The doctor didn't answer directly. He just said, "We'll monitor him closely." My stomach dropped into a black hole. Jack was alive, but the cost? We had no idea. Jack survived the night. That's the first thing I need to say. Because for a while, none of us were sure he would die. The ICU was a place I never wanted to know so well. Machines beeped steadily, tubes snaked into his arms, an oxygen mask covered half his swollen face. His chest rose and fell with a rhythm that wasn't his own. It belonged to the machines keeping him alive. Lizzie and I weren't allowed in at first. Only family. So we sat outside, side by side, in those stiff plastic waiting room chairs that felt like they were designed to make you more miserable. His mom paced non-stop. His dad just sat in silence, staring at the floor. Every so often, he'd pinch pinched the bridge of his nose like he was trying to physically push the tears back inside. When a doctor finally emerged, the air in that room froze. "He's stable," the doctor began. Relief rippled through the room. Then he continued. "But there was a significant period of oxygen deprivation before the epinephrine was administered. His heart and lungs responded, but the brain will need to wait until he regains consciousness to assess the extent of the damage." Jack's mom gripped the chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. "What are you saying?" the doctor sighed, looking almost apologetic. "I'm saying he may not wake up the same. We're talking about possible cognitive impairment, motor function loss. It depends on how long the brain went without sufficient oxygen. We won't know until he wakes." The room fell into silence so heavy it felt like it might crush me. 2 days passed before Jack opened his eyes. I wasn't there for the first moment. His parents were. But when I was finally allowed in, I barely recognized him. His gaze was unfocused, wandering. His movements were jerky, weak. He tried to talk, but the words slurred together, barely intelligible. "Hey, buddy," I whispered, pulling a chair close. My throat burned. "You scared the hell out of me." His lips twitched. Maybe a smile, maybe just the mask pulling. Lizzie came in behind me. When Jack saw her, his eyes filled with something I couldn't name. Maybe love, maybe confusion, maybe both. She burst into tears and grabbed his hand, apologizing over and over. "I'm sorry, Jack. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I should have told you." He tried to shake his head. His hand twitched in hers, the faintest squeeze. The doctor's words proved true. The damage was real. Jack couldn't walk. He couldn't even sit up without help. His speech was slow, broken. He'd survived, but the old Jack, the one who ran laps in gym class, the one who joked non-stop about stupid memes, the one who carried himself like nothing could touch him. That Jack was gone. Now he needed a wheelchair. Therapy. Months, maybe years of rehabilitation. When the reality set in, Lizzie pulled away from me in the hallway and whispered, "I did this to him." I wanted to argue, to tell her it wasn't her fault, but the words stuck in my throat. Because deep down I knew the truth. She hadn't meant it. But yeah, her peanut protein bar had been the trigger. But it wasn't just her. It was that stupid law. It was the teacher who chose rules over compassion. It was a system that put liability above life. The first week in the hospital was a blur of therapists, specialists, and endless tests. His parents barely left his side. Lizzie kept coming too, even when Jack's mom wouldn't look her in the eye. And me? I came every day after school, sat by his bed, and tried to pretend things would somehow go back to normal. But deep down, I knew they wouldn't. One evening, while Jack dozed, his dad sat next to me in the waiting room. His voice was low, quiet, like he was talking to himself. "They failed him," he said. "The school, the teachers, the law, everyone failed him." I didn't answer. There wasn't anything to say. Then he looked at me, his eyes sharp. "You didn't? You're the reason he's alive. Don't forget that." I wanted to believe him. But all I could think was that maybe if I'd run faster, broken in sooner, maybe Jack wouldn't be stuck in that bed with tubes in his arms. Weeks passed. The swelling went down, but the damage remained. Jack learned to sit up with help. He tried speaking more, but his words were slow, sometimes incoherent. A therapist explained that the oxygen loss had caused permanent damage. He'd probably never walk again without assistance. The news hit like a bomb. His mom cried in the hallway for an hour straight. His dad broke a chair in the waiting room. Lizzie vanished for days at a time, guilt eating her alive. Me, I just sat with him, day after day, telling stupid stories, pretending we were still just two kids hanging out after school. Sometimes he laughed, a weak, wheezing laugh, but it was something. But every night when I left the hospital and walked home under the streetlights, I thought about how easily it could have been avoided, how he should have had his meds right. How one adult could have made a different choice, and none of this would have happened. And that anger was starting to boil. Because the hospital was only the beginning. You'd think after everything, the school would have shown some kind of remorse. Maybe support Jack and his family. Maybe admit that the rules were broken, that someone should have stepped up. But no. The first meeting between Jack's parents and the administration happened about 2 weeks after the incident. Jack was still in the hospital, hooked up to half the machines in the ICU, when his mom and dad sat down with the principal, a couple of district lawyers, and of course our homeroom teacher. I wasn't in the room, but Jack's dad told me later how it went. The principal leaned back in his chair, hands folded like he was conducting some kind of business deal instead of talking about a kid whose life had just been wrecked. He said words like unfortunate, tragic, and deeply regrettable, but he never once said our fault. The district lawyer kept repeating the same line. The incident occurred off school grounds. Liability does not apply. Jack's mom almost flipped the table. She told them she'd watched her son cling to life. She'd heard the doctors say he'd never walk again, and that she knew damn well the school had locked his meds away. The lawyer just nodded coldly and said, "Those medications are only accessible on campus during school hours. That is the policy." Policy. That word kept echoing in my head for weeks, as if policy could excuse letting a kid suffocate 20 feet from the front door. When Jack finally got out of the hospital, he didn't come home. He went straight to a rehabilitation center. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. Every day was a war just to sit upright or form a single clear sentence. And while he was fighting for scraps of his old life back, the school sent his parents a letter. Not an apology. Not an offer to support him. A letter of expulsion. They claimed it was for his own safety. That given his medical fragility, the school couldn't provide the resources to guarantee his well-being on campus. Translation. They were terrified of being responsible if anything happened again. They cut him loose. When I heard, I wanted to burn the whole damn building down. Jack had been part of our class since kindergarten. He'd gone through all the same sports days, the same math tests, the same cafeteria pizza Fridays, and now, just because he needed a wheelchair and special care, they threw him out like he was a liability instead of a human being. I still remember the first time I visited him at the rehab center after he found out He was sitting by the window, his wheelchair parked at an awkward angle, a therapy band still looped around his arm. He looked smaller somehow, like the weight of everything was crushing him from the inside. They kicked me out, he said, his words slow and slurred, but clear enough. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to lie, to tell him it was temporary, that things would work out. But the letter was sitting right there on the tray table beside him. I could see the official school seal, the lawyer speak paragraphs, the signature at the bottom dot. So I just sat down across from him and said, then screw them. You don't need them. His eyes welled up. But my friends, that hit me harder than anything else. Because yeah, we could still hang out, I could still visit, but it wasn't the same. He wouldn't be in the halls, at lunch, in class. The school had erased him. Lizzie stopped coming around as much after that. She said she couldn't face him, couldn't face his parents. The guilt was eating her alive. I didn't blame her, but I hated it all the same. Jack needed friends, not ghosts. Meanwhile, whispers spread through the school. Some kids said Jack's family was suing. Others said he'd nearly died because he wasn't careful enough. A few even joked about peanut kisses. I wanted to punch every one of them in the face. The administration, of course, pretended like nothing had happened. No announcements, no assembly about allergies or safety, no discussion about the law that had almost killed him. It was like they decided the best strategy was silence, as if ignoring Jack would erase what happened. But it didn't erase it. It just made me angrier. Because I knew Jack's parents weren't going to let this slide, and neither was I. The school could try to bury their guilt under paperwork and policies, but the truth had already started leaking out. Parents were talking, teachers were whispering, reporters had sniffed around the hospital. And when Jack's parents filed their lawsuit, suddenly the silence didn't feel so safe for the school anymore. It felt like the calm before a storm. Jack's parents didn't waste time. Within a month of his release from the hospital, they had a lawyer, a good one, the kind that didn't blink when you told him your son had been left to die 20 feet from a school entrance because of a law about boundaries. The lawsuit hit like a thunderclap. Jefferson School District and the state of Indiana versus the Miller family. It demanded damages, accountability, and most of all, change. At first, the district brushed it off. They thought they could bury it, like they'd buried Jack. They leaned on the same line they'd used in every meeting. The incident occurred off school grounds, but then the media got hold of it. A local paper ran the headline, "Teen nearly dies after teachers refuse to help. New law to blame." Within days, TV crews were parked outside the school. Parents were interviewed in the drop-off line. Reporters dug up everything. The peanut protein bar, the teacher refusing to hand over the EpiPen, me breaking into the classroom. My name wasn't in print, but everyone at school knew Suddenly, Jefferson High wasn't just a quiet suburban school. It was ground zero in a national debate about safety, liability, and how far rules should go. The trial began 6 months later. By then, Jack was in a wheelchair full-time. His speech had improved slightly, but he still slurred, still struggled to find words. Watching him roll into the courthouse that first day broke something in me. He should have been walking in with us, making dumb jokes about how boring court would be. Instead, he was hunched in a chair, his hands trembling on the wheels. The courtroom was packed. Parents, reporters, even some of our classmates snuck in to watch. Jack's mom took the stand. First, she described getting that phone call, rushing to the hospital, hearing the doctor say oxygen deprivation. Her voice cracked when she said, "My son's life was stolen because an adult chose the law over humanity." Then they called. Our homeroom teacher. She looked terrified, sitting there in the witness box. The district's lawyer asked her to explain why she hadn't handed over the EpiPen. She clung to her script like it was a lifeline. The law clearly stated no teacher could provide medical assistance to a student off school grounds. I feared for my job, my license, and possible prosecution. Jack's lawyer leaned forward. "You were aware that failure to provide that medication could result in his death?" She hesitated, then nodded, eyes glassy. "Yes." "And you still chose to do nothing?" Her voice cracked. I was told I had no choice." The room erupted. Murmurs, gasps, a few outright shouts. The judge had to pound his gavel for silence. Other teachers were called. Some admitted quietly that they had EpiPens locked away too, that they'd been explicitly warned not to risk giving them out once students left school grounds. One even broke down crying, saying, "We were scared. We wanted to help, but the law made us afraid of losing everything." And then came my turn. Walking up to the stand, I felt my legs shake. My palms were sweaty. But when I saw Jack sitting there in his wheelchair, looking at me with those tired, broken eyes, I knew I had to say it. I told the court everything. How I begged for help. How she refused. How I stole the keys, broke into the classroom, grabbed the meds, and stuck the needle in Jack's leg while he was turning blue. The district's lawyer tried to twist it. "So you admit to theft, to breaking and entering, to endangering others?" I leaned into the mic and said, "I admit I saved my best friend's life, something no one else had the courage to do." The courtroom went silent. The trial dragged on for weeks. Expert witnesses testified about allergies, about how every second counts. Doctors explained that if Jack had received epinephrine even 3 minutes earlier, the brain damage might have been avoided. The defense kept repeating their mantra, "Off school grounds, not our responsibility." But the more they said it, the more hollow it sounded. Jack's dad gave one of the final testimonies, his voice thundered through the courtroom. My son isn't a loophole. He isn't a liability. He's a kid who trusted the adults around him, and they let him die on the sidewalk. Don't tell me about school grounds. Tell me about humanity. When the jury finally came back, you could feel the tension buzz in the air. Parents gripped each other's hands. Reporters held cameras at the ready. The verdict. In favor of the Miller family. The district and the state were found negligent. They were ordered to pay damages, millions, enough to cover Jack's care for life. But more than that, the law itself was put under review. Jack's mom sobbed into his dad's shoulder. Jack himself smiled weakly, tears streaming down his face. Me? I just sat there. No, we'd won. But it didn't feel like a victory, because no amount of money or legal reform was going to give Jack back the life he should have had. But the fight wasn't over, because the verdict sparked something bigger. News stations across the country picked up the story. Lawmakers started scrambling again, only this time to fix what they'd broken. In Jack's family, they weren't just fighting for him anymore. They were fighting for every kid who might be the next Jack. After the verdict, everything changed. Jack wasn't just that kid from Jefferson High anymore. He became the face of a national story. Overnight, our small town turned into a circus of reporters, camera vans, and talk show invitations. At first, Jack's parents tried to shield him. They didn't want his face plastered on every channel, didn't want him treated like a mascot. But then his dad said something that stuck with me. If we stay quiet, they'll write their own version of the story. If we speak, maybe we save another kid's life. So they spoke. The first interview aired on a local station. Jack's mom sat next to him, one hand on his shoulder as he sat in his wheelchair. She told the world exactly what happened. The kiss, the peanut bar, the teacher refusing to help. Jack tried to speak too. His words were slow, slurred, but powerful all the same. Rules over life, that's wrong. That clip went viral. By the next morning, it was on national news. Talk shows dissected it. Politicians tweeted about it. Hashtags trended. #JusticeForJack and #LifeOverRules. People were outraged. Teachers from other states spoke out anonymously, admitting they too had been scared to help students because of liability laws. Parents flooded school boards with demands. The story became bigger than just Jack. It became a symbol of how bureaucracy was literally killing kids. Then came the documentary. A major streaming service reached out to Jack's parents. At first, they hesitated, but when they realized the producers wanted to focus on the broken system, not just Jack's suffering, they agreed. The crew showed up at school, at the rehab center, even at my house. They interviewed me for 2 hours straight, asking what I saw, what I did, what I felt when the teacher told me no. I told them everything. I didn't hold back. I wanted people to know how it felt to be 16 years old, watching your best friend suffocate while adults turned their backs. Lizzie was interviewed too. That was the hardest part for her. She cried on camera, holding the protein bar wrapper in her hand. It was my fault, she said, voice trembling. But the rules killed him more than I ever could. When the documentary finally came out, it was brutal. The opening scene was me on the 911 call, screaming for help. Then it cut to footage of Jack in his wheelchair, trying to say his name. It didn't sensationalize. It didn't need to. The truth was devastating enough. Critics called it a damning portrait of a system that values policy over humanity. Parents across the country showed it in living rooms. Teachers cried watching it. Lawmakers were forced to answer questions live on TV. And Jack, he became a hero. Not because he wanted to be, not because he asked for it, but because his story ripped the blindfold off an entire country. I remember the night we watched the documentary together. It was me, Jack, his parents, and Lizzie. We sat in his living room, the TV glowing in the dark. Jack laughed weakly when my voice cracked during my interview. Lizzie kept her face buried in her hands. When it ended, silence filled the room. No one knew what to say. Then Jack whispered, "It helps others." His mom broke down crying, hugging him so tight I thought she'd never let go. And for the first time since that horrible day outside the school, I felt like maybe, just maybe, something good could come out of all this pain. The documentary ended with a single sentence on the screen. The law was repealed in 2024. Because of Jack, because of what happened to him, the law that had nearly killed him was destroyed. But while the country celebrated, I couldn't shake one thought. Why did it take almost killing my best friend to make people care? The lawsuit ended with a victory, but the truth is, it never felt like one. The jury's decision forced the school district and the state to pay millions in damages, enough to cover Jack's medical care for life, enough to make administrators squirm and lawyers sweat. But when the judge read the verdict aloud, no one cheered. Jack's mom cried quietly into her husband's shoulder. Jack just sat in his wheelchair, blinking slowly, as though the weight of the moment was too heavy for him to carry. I kept staring at him, thinking, this is what victory looks like? My best friend trapped in a chair, struggling to form sentences, while the people who failed him walk free. But the fight wasn't just about money. The law that had silenced teachers, the one that made them too afraid to act, was repealed. Schools were forced to create new policies, ones that prioritized life over liability. Teachers could carry EpiPens, they could intervene, they could be human beings again. That was Jack's legacy. Months later, the documentary dropped. Then, Jack's name was known across the country. Strangers mailed letters to his family, thanking him for saving their kids, for changing the system. Some even sent donations, handmade cards, artwork. One envelope held a picture drawn by a little girl who'd survived a peanut reaction at her school. Underneath, she'd written in shaky crayon crayon letters. Thank you, Jack. Jack cried when his mom read it to him. We all did. Life never went back to normal. Jack would never walk again. He'd never play basketball like he used to, never sprint down the hallway to make it to class before the bell. His speech was slow, his movements clumsy. Every day was a battle dot, but he was a live dot, and more than that, he was a symbol. Proof that one story, one tragedy, could shake an entire system awake. Dot. Sometimes I think back to that moment outside the school. The way Lizzie screamed. The way my teacher looked at me through her car window and said, "I can't." That memory burns me alive every time. Because rules nearly killed my best friend. Because adults failed him. Because a stupid protein bar and a kiss almost became his death sentence. Dot. But then I think of what came after. The lawsuit. The repeal. The kids who are alive today because teachers can help them without fear. Dot. And I think maybe Jack was right that night we watched the documentary together. Maybe it was worth it. If it saved others. Dot. Still, comma, as his best friend, I'll never stop asking the question that keeps me up at night. Why did it take almost losing him for anyone to care?